We continue now at the top of Daf Kufyat Aleph Amud Beis in Meseches Bava Kamma. This is Bava Kamma Daf 111b. This is the beginning of the 10th parak of Meseches Bava Kamma. The Mishnah says, Hagozel umachel es banav, if somebody steals and then he feeds what he stole to his children, v'hiniach lifneim, or he just leaves it to his children, peturin milashalim, the children are patur from paying back. V'im haya davar sheyesh bo achrayas, but if it's something with achrayas, which the Gemara will explain, chayav and lashalim, so then they are obligated to pay it back. Rashi explains, Hagozel umachil v'hiniach lifneim, he steals it and he feeds it to his children, or he leaves it to them. Oshe niach lifneim, it means to say, or he leaves it to them, meaning hagazela kayemis, we're talking about where the gazela, the item that was stolen, is still around. Peturim milashalim, they don't have to pay. But Gemara mefarish time, and the Gemara will explain the reason. Im hayadavar, if it's something with achrayas, they do have to pay. But Gemara mefarshi la marhachi, in the Gemara, one master will explain it one way, the other will explain it the other way. And the Gemara explains, Amar Rav Chisda says, Gazal velonis yaishu habaylim, if somebody steals and the original owner does not give up hope, uba acher v'achlu, and then somebody else comes along and consumes the stolen product. So the halacha is, Ratza mizeh gov, if he wants, he can collect from the person who stole. If he wants, he can collect from the other person, the person who ate it. And the Gemara says, my time, and what's the reason? Called Kamma because as long as the original owner has not given up hope, it's really still in the possession of the original owner. And as Rashi explains, so this person who ate it, who consumed it, he also, it's like he stole it from the original owner. So they're both considered to be gazlanim. That's why if he wants, he collects from this one. If he wants, he can collect from the other one. And the Gemara says, Tanan, we learned in our Mishnah, if somebody steals and feeds it to his children, or he leaves it in front of them, so they don't have to pay. And so the Gemara says, Tiyufta de Rav Chisda, isn't that a refutation of Rav Chisda? Because here it's saying that he stole it, gave it to somebody else, and apparently it's no longer something that it is in his possession. He's not able to collect. And the Gemara says to that, Amar lach Rav Chisda will say to you, Kitanya ahi lachar yesh. What's our Mishnah talking about? Our Mishnah talking about it's not talking about before there was yesh, before the original owner gave up hope. It's talking about after the original owner gave up hope, in a situation where the original owner already gave up hope. So then if it goes to somebody else, in this case if it goes to the children, that's already a yesh and a shina reshus, that creates a kinyan, and that's why the original owner is not able to collect. And the Gemara continues at the two dots, it says that if he leaves it to his children, so then they're patur from paying. And the Gemara says, Amar Rami Bar Chama says, Zoso Meres, this proves, Rishus Yoresh Kirishus Lokeach Dami, that when a Yoresh inherits it, so his possession is like the Rishus of a Lokeach, like somebody who purchases it. And again, it's like we said, that's a Shine Rishus, and that's why there's a Kinyan. And Rashi explains, Zoso Meres Dekatani Vihiniach Lifneim Patur, and it says again, if he leaves it to his children, they are patur. That shows Rishus Yoresh Kirishus Lokeach Dami, that the Rishus of the heir is the same thing as the Rishus of a buyer. It's another rishus. And since we said that, we just said according to Rav Chisda that our Mishnah is talking after Yush, so what's happening in our Mishnah is that the orphans, their kona through the combination of Yush and Shina Rishus, the Beyish Kadi. Now if you're just going to talk about Yush alone, lo kani, that's not a good kinyan. Lo katani patura bavun, because then it would have said patur by the father. It doesn't say that, and so therefore the fact that it's talking specifically by the children, that shows again that there's Yush and Shinei Rishus, and that creates the Kinyan. That's Rami Bar Chama's understanding of the Mishnah. But the Gemara continues, Rava says, Rishus Yoresh lav kirishus lokeach dami, that the Rishus of the Yoresh is not considered like the Rishus of the Lokeach, and you don't really have a Shinoi Rishus over here. So the question is, when it goes to the children, why is it that they are patur? And the Gemara says, and here in the Mishnah, what are we talking about? Kisha achlam. We're talking about a situation where they actually consumed the product after the death of their father, and they're not gazlanim themselves, it's only the father who stole, so therefore they're not responsible. As Rashi says, Kisha achlam la'achar misa savi, and after their father died, they ate whatever product was stolen. V'nigzal ein yachol etovan, the person who was stolen from, he can't claim it from them. Sharei lo gazlu, because they didn't steal it. That's how Rava understands our Mishnah. There's not a yish and a shina rishus Rishus creating a kinyan in this case, because the Rishus Yorish is not Rishus Lokeach. Rather, he just can't claim it from them because they already consumed, they already ate whatever it was that was stolen. But the Gemara continues, Hamidikatani Seifa, but from the fact that it says at the end of the Mishnah, Im haya davar sheyesh bo achrayas, it says if it's something with achrayas, chayav and l'shalim, then they have to pay. And Rashi explains, Hamidikatani Seifa, haya davar sheyesh bo achrayas, what that means is, kagon davar hanikor l'ravim. Let's say it's something that is obvious to the public, they know who this really belonged to. Venira kol shah, and something that you can see all the time. Kain karka, like land, or kagon talis uchsus, or a talis, or a garment that clearly belonged to the nigzal. That's the way we're understanding davar sheyesh bo achrayas. So it said chayav and l'shalim. So then they do have to pay. And Rashi explains chayav and l'hachzira, they have to return it. It means mimnei kavod avi, and that's because of the honor of their father. Shabrios omros zu talis shagazal ploni, because everybody knows, everybody is saying this is the talis that so and so stole. So in that situation, they do have to return it. But that's mechlal. That implies the reisha b'gzela kayemes askinan, that the reisha of the Mishnah is talking about where the item is still around, because that's the whole point. It's still around. The question is it something that is obvious to the public? It's not obvious to the public. So how does Rav explain that if it seems like the Mishnah is talking about gzela kayemes? And the Gemara says to that, Amar lach Rava, Rava will say to you, Hachi Kamma, this is what the Mishnah means to say. Im hiniach lemaviyam achrayas nechasim chayav and l'shalim. If the father left achrayas nechasim, so then they have to pay. Rashi explains, Hachi Kamma, here's what the Mishnah is actually saying at the end. Im hiniach lenaviyan karkos mishalo. If their father left them land, so then afilu achlu asakzel, even if they did consume the item that was stolen, chayav and they are chayav the ishtabin nechasim davun mechayim, because then there's a lien on the property of their father from when he was alive. But the Gemara continues, V'amasni le Rebbe le Rebbe Shimon Berei, but didn't Rebbe teach Rebbe Shimon his son, lo davar sheyesh bo achrayas mamish, that the way to understand the Mishnah is not a davar sheyesh bo achrayas, actually something with achrayas, meaning land, el afilu para v'choresh, but we're talking even about a cow that he would plow with, chamor mechamer acharav, or even a donkey which he would use, chayav and lahachster, they have to return, mipnei kvod avian, because of the honor of their father, and it's clear from what Rebbe is telling Rebbe Shimon his son, that we're not talking about achrayas like there's a lien on the property, but we're talking about what we originally understood, that we're talking about something that's nicker, that's obvious, that it belonged to the person who was stolen from. As Rashi explains, lo davar sheyesh bo achrayas mamish, not something where there's real achrayas, lo shagazal karka v'yinicha lefnein, meaning we're not talking about stolen land which was placed in front of them to the Yarshim, el afilu gazal para v'charash, but even if he stole a cow and he plowed with it, or chamor mechamer acharav, or a donkey and he used it, v'akol me'idin, and everybody knows, everybody testifies, shahaya denigzal, that this at one point in time belonged to the nigzal, chayav in their chayiv, alma b'gzela kayemes askin, and we do see that the Mishnah is talking about a situation where the item that was stolen was still in front of us, so you can't give this answer, Rava's answer, that we're talking where the item was consumed. And so the Gemara continues, Elam Rava, rather Rava says, Kisha chivna, when I die, Rabbi Oshia nafik levase, Rabbi Oshia will come out to greet me, to taritzna masnisin kavase, because I actually learned the Mishnah like him. Despite what Rebbe said to Rabbi Shimon, his son, I actually learned the Mishnah in accordance with the teaching of Rabbi Oshia. To Tani Rabbi Oshia, because Rabbi Oshia taught, Hagozel umachil esbanav, if somebody steals and feeds it to his children, petur and milasham, they're patur from paying. Hiniach lifneihem, if he leaves it in front of them, gzela kayemes, if the item that was stolen was still around, chayav, and so then they're chayiv. Ein hagzela kayemes, but if the item that was stolen is not around anymore, petur, and then they are patur. And finally, hiniach lehem aviyam achrayas nechasim, if the father leaves them achrayas nechasim, again in the way that Rava understood, meaning there's a lien on his property, chayav and l'shalim, so then they do have to pay. And Rashi explains the Brais of Rav Oshia, Gezela Kayemis, if the item that was stolen is still around, meaning Shaloach lo achremo, so they didn't consume it after his death, V'tavan ha-nigzal, and then the nigzal claims it. So chayav, and so they're chayiv. The rishus yorish lav rishus lokeach dami, because the yorish's rishus is not the same as a lokeach. The yish kadi lokani, and yish alone is not going to create a kinyan. But ein gezela kayemis, but if the item is not around, shachlu acharei moso, that they consumed it after his death, petur, and then they're pater, de'inu lo gazal midi, because they themselves didn't steal anything. And finally, hiniach lenavi and achrayas nechasim karka mishalo. If their father leaves them achrayas, meaning he leaves them land, there's a lien on the property, chayav and l'shalim, so then they're obligated to pay the ishtab and nichse, because you have again a she, but you have a lien on his property. And so the Gemara now continues, Amar Mar, the master said, quoting the Brais that we just brought above, Ein hagzela kayemes patur. It says if the gazela is not around anymore, then they are patur. And the Gemara says, Neima tehavit yufta de Rav Chisda. Let us say that that's a refutation of Rav Chisda. As Rashi says, the Rav Chisda da amar la'el, because Rav Chisda said before, Ratzami zegov, you can collect from either party, because Rav Chisda understood that it's still in the reshus of the original owner, and therefore the person that consumed it actually is a gazlan, you can collect from him as well. This seems to be a refutation. This seems to be saying they're not responsible if they consumed it. And the Gemara says, Amar lach Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda will say to you, it's not a question at all. Kitanya hi lachar yish, because this Bryce is talking after yish. So after yish is different than before yish. If it's before yish, so then it's in the reshus of the original owner. Then you have a situation where those who consumed it are considered gazlanim. But after yish, that's not the case. And Rashi says, la'achar yish v'achlu. It was after yish that they consumed it. Therefore, it's not a question on Rav Chisda. And the Gemara continues, Amar Mar, the master said, Gezela Kayemis, again, it said in the Brisa that if the item that was stolen is still around, Chayav and Lashalim, then they do have to pay. And so now the Gemara says, Neima Tehavit Yufta Rami Bar Chama. Let's say that's a refutation of Rami Bar Chama. As Rashi explains, Tehavit Yufta Rami Bar Chama came into La'achar Yehush Ukimta, because if you're now saying we're talking here after Yehush, so then you have a situation of Yehush and Shinoi Rishus according to Rami Bar Chama, and it should be a Kinyan, and therefore they should not be Chayiv. And to that the Gemara says, Amar Lach Rami Bar Chama, Rami Bar Chama will say to you, Kitanya Ahi, what is that Brisa referring to? And we will continue with this discussion in the next video on Daf Yud Beis Amud Aleph.